We need to talk about ideas, good ones and bad ones. We need to learn stuff about the world. We need an honest, intelligent, thought-provoking, and entertaining review of what the hell happened on this planet in the last 7 days. We need to sit back and listen to the Iron Fist and the Velvet Glove.
We do indeed. The Iron Fist and the Velvet Glove podcast. I'm Trevor. Over there in regional Queensland, back after a bit of a break, is Scott the Velvet Glove. How are you, Scott?
Good, thanks, Trevor. G'day, Joe. G'day, Trevor. G'day, listeners. I hope everyone's doing well.
And with us as well, Joe the Tech Guy.
Evening all.
Yeah. So, three of us, which is good. It feels like it's been a while. Where have you been, Scott? Have you been anywhere? No, just issues. I should have asked before we started going live. Don't tell me if you don't want to. You might have been up to something you don't want to disclose.
I'm considering buying a business up here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I'll have to
it's
quiz you a
going
bit
into
more
partnership with someone else, which is good because I don't know a first thing about it, but she would be able to run it and all that sort of stuff. All I have to do is do the books.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'll ask you more about that afterwards.
Yes, exactly.
How is the prospect for the meth business up in?
Yeah.
Meth is going gangbusters up here.
Okay.
Yeah, they are.
He's done his market research.
Yeah.
It's like I've said before. Miners are as thick as two short planks and half as interesting, because they can't smoke dope anymore because that gets picked up on the drug tests a couple of weeks later. Mm-hmm. So they found out that if you just take meth, it goes through your system a hell of a lot faster, which means you can survive the P test when you return to the mine a couple of days later, and you can piss it out, and it's no problem at all.
There we go.
So that's why they're all using meth and everything else, and that is one of the things. Anyway, I can tell you all about it off air, but it's just I'm not going to be a
I'm
meth
starting to think he really is running a meth lab.
No, I'm not actually going to run a meth business or anything like that, but it's just one of those things. I can fully appreciate and understand why the hell they do it, because you've got a ready group of people that are prepared to purchase it, and and they are all cashed up. They've got a hell of a lot of cash. So anyway.
I'm just going to get this jacket off. I'm really hot and I'm all tied up in a knot here. Hang on 1 second.
And Trevor's doing a striptease for us, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah.
Those watching along on the podcast later.
Yeah.
It's only been 477 episodes. You would have thought I'd learn to be properly attired for a podcast. But anyway, here we go. Mm-hmm. So on the agenda, dear listener, just give Gaza a break for a week because it's just going to get really worse over the next few weeks as the starvation phase of the extermination takes hold, and we will get increasingly more stories about that. And
haven't a couple of the hard right ministers and all that sort of stuff threatened to walk away from the government, or haven't they actually walked away from the government?
From the Israeli government?
Yeah.
I don't know, Scott. But
I heard
it's all too late now.
Yeah, I know. It's too late for the Gazans right now, but I just think to myself, if they could actually get into an election, if they could actually change the government and all that sort of stuff, which I know is becoming increasingly unlikely, it's just a possibility that they could actually reverse it.
The polls I read, the population over there has been so poisoned that they're quite happy with the arrangement that's going on. So, yeah. So, thank you. Murray says at least call for donations, Trevor, before the strip. I should have thought of that. Yeah. So, on the agenda, we're going to talk, Joe, a little bit about artificial intelligence, then a little bit about crazy American beliefs on evolution, and then good old China, range of topics in relation to China. So, but before I do, a shout out to Jade, who I met at my granddaughter's birthday party on Saturday, who is a listener to the podcast. Good on you, Jade. Also, shout out to Liam and Shannon, who I've been corresponding with. And with all of them, I think we're talking about other podcasts. There's another podcast out called We Used to Be Journos by Jan Fran and Antoinette Latouf, the lady who was sacked from the ABC. Not a bad one, sort of Australian news and politics. And if you're looking for something a bit different, there's a thing called a podcast called Blind Boy Podcast, and it's an Irish guy who talks about a range of different topics and cleverly weaves them in together. He's got a lovely Irish accent. So if you're looking for another podcast to listen to, I recommend the Blind Boy Podcast. So check those out. But anyway, shout-outs done. Joe, artificial intelligence. You have been a bit of a poo-poo naysayer about artificial intelligence.
Yeah, I
seems
think
to me.
anyone close to the tech is a little more sceptical of a lot of the claims.
So I came across this article basically saying that a lot of the hype around AI is facilitated by the fact that artificial intelligence is such a slippery concept. And in terms of just the way we describe it, this person argued if you're developing software that classifies images, call it an automated imaging classifier. And if you're building a chatbot that can converse with a human or synthesize writing, call it a text extruding machine. Joe, do you like that one? A text extruding machine?
Well, we've already got large language model, which is what they are. They're a text predictor. They aren't intelligent. They have no knowledge of truth.
Yep.
They just tell you what word is likely to come next in a sentence.
Yes. Churning
And
out
when you
one word
realise that,
after another based on the probability that the next word fits well with those that came before it. Yeah. You do just listen to some people who are really raving about the possibilities of AI. And if that's all it's doing, that's not intelligence as such.
And the thing is, it doesn't say, I don't know. It quite happily holds forth and tells you exactly what its language generation model predicts is next, despite it being completely incorrect.
So anyway, Apple put out a report, Joe, called The Illusion of Thinking, Understanding the Strengths and Limitations of Reasoning Models via the Lens of Problem Complexity, which was basically looking at these AI software programs and even the most cutting-edge large reasoning models are no more than a very gifted parrots, with basically no actual reasoning capability. This author was arguing that they're not intelligent in the slightest. And what the report from Apple showed, Joe, they presented these things with some puzzles. And one of the puzzles that was the complex puzzle, the AI was able to solve it a bit easier than the simple puzzle. And the reason was that the more complex puzzle had basically better exposure on the internet, and the AI memorized the answers to the puzzle, whereas the simpler puzzle was less well known and AI hadn't had a chance to basically memorize the puzzle. Does that sound right to you?
Yeah, I tried teaching, I can't remember, one of the models, I think Llama, how to do an online, not crossword, but a word puzzle.
Yep.
And gave it multiple examples, solved examples, and then said, right, here's today's puzzle. Can you solve it? And it was totally useless.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you ask it, what was it? How many R's in strawberry? It gets it completely wrong.
Right.
It has no intuition. It has no understanding. It literally just parrots words.
Yeah.
And the other problem is it's been trained on stolen text. And if you look, most online forums these days, if you look hidden deep in the terms of service, all of your work, all of your text, all of your images are open for them to steal, to train their models to better produce whatever it is they produce. So there have been artists who've complained that their art has been stolen and used to feed these models that then spit out art that looks like their work.
Yeah. So anyway, that was a bit on artificial intelligence that I'd been sort of just trying to get my head around whether this stuff is actually worthwhile or not. Do you use it at all, Scott? Have you ever used any?
I've
AI
only
for
ever
anything?
used ChatGPT just to help me out with selection criteria and that sort of stuff.
Right.
Just put it in there, and then I've turned around and written it like a human being. I just get the main ideas from ChatGPT, and then after that, I humanize it and send it down to the better half for him to have a look at and all that sort of stuff, and he approves it. If it's approved, then I apply for the job.
Came across an old poll. Well, old, 12 years old. This was on a YouGov poll on Americans' opinions about evolution. So essentially, they were given sort of 4 options. One is human beings evolved from less advanced life forms over millions of years, and God did not directly guide the process. Sort of the standard, scientific version of evolution, if you like. The second option was that human beings evolved from less advanced life forms over millions of years, but God guided the process. So a bit of mixture of evolution and God's guidance. The third was God created human beings in their present form within the last 10,000 years. A fairly biblical sort of option. And then the fourth was don't know, not sure. And in 2013, in this YouGov poll, only 21% of Americans got the right answer, which of course is the first one that it's entirely down to evolution. 25% thought it was a mixture, evolution and God's guidance. 37% were just straight out biblical version. 17% don't know.
See, the problem with evolution as a religious concept is that once you accept that we have evolved from other animals, then you come back to there were no Adam and Eve because there were multiple creatures.
Yes.
And if you don't have Adam and Eve, then you can't have original sin. And if you don't have original sin, then you can't have Jesus to forgive us for our original sin.
Indeed. So people get trapped. Yeah. So just on this first answer of getting it totally right, evolution and no God, only 21% of Americans overall. Let's break that down. How many in these various categories got the correct answer? Based on race, white 25%, black 6%, and Hispanic 17%. So only 6% of black people got the right answer there. Education, if you were less than high school, only 9% of those people got the correct answer, whereas 32% of college graduates did and 37% of postgrad did. Mind you, in the postgrad, 33% think it's a mixture of God and evolution, and 16% are still all in on the biblical version.
You can get creationists who are PhD paleontologists and, well, certainly PhD, what's the study of rocks? Geologists.
Yes.
And you go, at this point, you just, parroting back what you don't believe just to get a PhD so that you can then spout your biblical beliefs going, but I've got a PhD, look at me.
Yes. Yeah. Gender, 26% of males got it right, only 17% female. Age-wise, the older you get, the less likely you are to get it right. 65 plus, those boomers again, only 20% of them got the right answer. Democrats, 28%. Republicans, 5%. Yikes. Oh.
Yeah, you see, Republicans like other people to do their thinking for them.
Yeah. Various religions, Protestant 8%, Roman Catholic 12%, Buddhists 87%. Good on you for the Buddhists. Atheists 87%, with a 12% don't know. There we go. So anyway, I thought that was just a shocking indictment on American education system yet again? I mean, it was an old poll, but it's
I've
undoubtedly still the
been
case.
surprised. I've worked with a couple of young earthers, and technical people, intelligent people. One was Filipino, so kind of you expect they absorbed it with the culture. The other one grew up in rural Queensland, and heavily brainwashed.
What does Murray say in the chat room? Because Murray's a tech expert. Let me just see if I can bring this up. Heading back to
AI,
yeah. So, what did he say here? I've got to get back to the beginning. I use it for policy and governance development. Use it to ask how things could be improved. Feed it a question and your response, then ask for an answer with certain constraints, like more professional and concise. Or you set up an executive of AIs, each with their own speciality of information handling, and one or more to manage which one gets what task. So I guess there are good examples where you have a knowledge base for a company and an AI bot has read the manual and can provide the answers.
Can regurgitate it. Yes.
Yeah.
So Word now has a text predictor that again predicts what is likely to come, and three-quarters of the time it's right.
Yeah.
And so it saves me typing in an extra 2 or 3 words towards the end of a sentence. I use it for that, and I've used it to polish up. When I was writing my resume, I would say, all right, here's a list of my achievements, turn that into a nice text spiel, and it will produce a nice paragraph or 2 paragraphs weaving in your facts. But even then, you can't leave it on its own because it will dream up achievements that you have, which you definitely don't.
My daughter actually, now I think of it, is using AI in HR, where managers are using it for practice interviews with staff, where they've got difficult conversations to have with staff, and a way of practicing their interview skills is to do it with an AI chat.
That makes sense if you're trained with a large body of possible outcomes.
Yes. Yeah. So, there we go. All right. So let me just get back to my agenda here. Little diversion there into American religious belief. Scott, our esteemed Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, has been in China. You've been keeping an eye out on the media coverage of his trip at all?
Not really, because I thought that it's going to be fairly China bashing and all that sort of stuff. And I've learnt my lesson not to bash China and everything else. So I've just got to try and find my information from other sources. And also, they don't seem to understand the way China does things. Like, I was actually talking to someone on Saturday. They reckon that in China, they take people around, they show them things first, and then once they've gone and done the touristy thing, then they say, right, now it's time to talk business. So Susan Lee and everything like that, her accusation that they were over there on holidays, it may well have looked like they were on holidays, but they were over there at the request of the Chinese government to go and look at all these things. And then after that, they got down to talking business once they'd done that.
Yes.
So that was a fairly it was a very good conversation that I had on Saturday anyway.
Yeah. It's killing the right-wing commentators in Murdoch through the Courier Mail, Australian, Sky News, other avenues like that, are just having conniptions over Albanese being relatively well treated in the meetings with the Chinese president.
Oh, I know. Yeah, they're expecting that the Chinese are going to open up the meeting by throwing rocks at him.
Well, they're just. I'm going to give you we're in a McCarthyist type era, Scott, with the beating of the drums of war against China, and just anything and everything that China does is to be viewed with suspicion, and anyone associated with them are also to be viewed with suspicion. And it's just nonsensical in the scheme of things. But if you're wondering, dear listener, how we're getting to this sort of stage, it's just orchestrated by these, let's face it, propagandists in the Murdoch press, for starters. So James Morrow on the 15th of July was writing in the Courier Mail, "At some point, Anthony Albanese has to make a call. Does Australia support democracies when they are set upon by their more powerful neighbours, brackets Ukraine, or do we say we support democracies in principle but raise the bat in the event it all gets too hard or might mess with our trade?" Taiwan. "Australia stands with Ukraine," Albanese said. "Yet when it came to Taiwan, another democracy with a menacing neighbour, the tone changes. We support the status quo. We don't support any unilateral action. Normally, these phrases would be taken as just diplomatic niceties with the understanding that, more than likely, we'd get involved on the side of freedom. But now it's not so clear. Albanese has made it clear that trade and jobs and trade are his priorities when it comes to China. And all that stuff about human rights and bully boy diplomacy is just a distraction." Oh, the hyperbole of these guys. I'll just pause there for a moment. Like, the whole problem with China for these guys is that they used to be able to say communist. But now, they look at China and it's obviously a free market operating in a lot of the segments of the economy, and they've got plenty of billionaires and millionaires, and the communist argument isn't working anymore. So the only one left is democracy and freedom versus authoritarian regimes. That's how it's changed. We have
one China policy, don't we?
So we do, but they don't like that. So they just...
Well, we've had it for, 50 years at least?
Yeah. They just keep wanting to beat up the idea of a war is going to happen between the US and China, and we need to say right now that we will be supporting the US in its fight to protect Taiwan. And it's just a continuous theme through the Murdoch press. Let me see what else he says here. Thanks to Albanese's repeated criticisms of the Trump administration in Washington, coupled with a refusal to increase Australia's defence spending or say anything more than the most cursory bad word about China's aggressive behaviour at sea, the question is now being asked in Washington: would we or wouldn't we help if China invaded Taiwan? It just goes on.
I'm struggling to remember. No, I've lost it. But the what was the accusation and what was the line from the first line you read from the report?
About trade? Was that the one? So do we care more about trade? No, I can
understand that. But then he said. Anyway, yeah. I was just struggling to remember where our government wasn't all that, wasn't critical of China when they had done something wrong. They've often said that we will agree where we can, but disagree where we must.
Mm.
Which is an entirely reasonable thing for them to say.
Mm. In more recent times, Albanese has said, because they've been talking about this when the Chinese ships were 300 kilometres off our coast and doing a live firing exercise, which might be just firing bullets into the water.
Mm.
He did say, well, we do conduct exercises ourselves in the South China Sea. And,
is that what he said, was it?
Yeah. Mm. So that was outrageous for these people. So
I think it was a perfectly reasonable thing for him to say.
Yeah, but they don't see it at all that way. What else have I got here? James Morrow. They basically are accusing Albanese of being a naive tourist, and that the Chinese have given him a lovely tour around the major sites and a visit to the pandas and the Great Wall, and he's a sucker for falling for it. That's the sort of language of Piers Ackerman in the Courier Mail. Like, what does he say here? Albanese is dealing with a dictator who has made no secret of his plans to actively expand the Chinese Communist Party's influence throughout the Pacific. Examples of China's contempt for our sovereignty are numerous, from the live firing exercises conducted in the Tasman Sea in February to the circumnavigation of our island nation by survey craft equipped with undersea drones capable of mapping critical cables and underwater canyons used by submarines. We now learn that Chinese interests have purchased land adjacent to our mooted nuclear submarine bases. Oh no, Scott. The Chinese are buying land next to our nuclear submarine bases.
That is, that is no problem at all, because if they are actually buying it for spying or anything like that, they're going to be under the surveillance of our own security organisations. So if you find out it's a nest of spies, you just move in and kick them out.
Yeah.
It's like the whole land bridge deal over the port in Darwin.
Yep.
I don't understand why people are getting their knickers in a twist over it. If the Chinese actually used it for intelligence or anything else, then we can kick them out. But right now, they're not actually doing that. And if they really wanted to, all they have to do is just, grab a unit in one of the places that's overlooking it where they could film everything that was going on. It's no problem at all.
Or just a spy satellite and just see whatever they want to that way.
Mm-hmm.
I just can't believe that they're going on about China owning the port, the Chinese company. It's in Australia. If we have a war with them, we just confiscate it.
Exactly.
It's entirely
we'd renationalise the asset.
If we had invested in a port in China, they'd be saying, well, the risk is that we'll lose it in the event of a war. Well, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Exactly, which is exactly
not
what
that
China's
our government
got.
invests in overseas ventures, does it?
No, it doesn't.
Not as clearly as that. No. So, look, there was another article in the same edition by Peter Credlin. I won't go through the details of that. It's more of the hyperbolic stuff. The letters to the editor. The main letter to the editor was Albo ducks big issues with China, and this was one.
Sorry, you're saying that Tony Abbott's chief of staff was negative against the Labor government. You shock me.
Yes, but the most shocking part, Joe, is the hypocrisy, because she was Tony Abbott's chief of staff when he invited China to the Chinese president, the same one, to address the Australian Parliament, negotiated a free trade agreement, and also entered into an extradition treaty with China.
Yeah, but you don't understand. That's when the LNP were doing it.
Yeah.
Now that it's Labor doing it, it's wrong.
And Abbott says in his defence, at the time it seemed like China was moving towards being nice guys.
Garbage.
And now it's clear that they're not, and so now it wouldn't be, it's not on, but it was when he did it.
It's probably all about jobs and growth.
Yeah.
At the risk of upsetting Trevor, I think that, June 1989 should have actually put a pall on that, because China was moving towards it, but then it all fell apart in 1989, and they actually came to an agreement with the people saying, we will make you rich if you just tolerate what we're doing. And that's what the people have actually accepted. The people have accepted it. Otherwise, there'd be a revolution in China, which I just don't think there's going to be, because their standard of living has gone up so much that they're no longer interested in rocking the boat.
But then you get America, where the standard of living has gone down and they're still not doing a revolution, even though fascist is obviously taking power.
I agree. It's one of those things. I just think to myself, it would be better if there was some sort of revolution in the United States rather than in China. And I think that I actually believe that there is a possibility that at some point they're going to roll out the guillotines and they're going to take a few heads off in the US.
We can only hope.
Yeah.
And just to finish off on that topic of Abbott, it was the union movement that was criticising the fair trade agreement and the extradition deal. And who's the guy who wears the cardigans in the Australian?
Greg Sheridan?
Yes. He was criticising the union movement at the time for being traitors to the Australian cause because they were criticising the Chinese deals, the very deals now that Sheridan and the rest of them are saying should never have been done.
They're idiots. It's just that if the LNP was in office doing that sort of thing, it would be silence coming from the Murdoch media. But because the Labor Party's in power, then they've got the knives out for them. Yeah.
So, let me just – I'm just going to try and read this thing. There's also still in the Courier Mail, just in the letters section, was an article, and I just got to bear with me a second because it's a bit hard for me to read it, and I'm just adjusting things so I can get the whole thing. Talking about a previous letter saying Dominic blah blah wrote that China has not invaded or bombed any other sovereign nation, unlike the US in the past 75 years. History does not support this contention. In 1950, China illegally invaded and occupied Tibet. The Dalai Lama was eventually forced to flee to India. In 1962, Chinese troops invaded India and the Sino-Indian War commenced. There were numerous casualties on both sides. In 1969, Chinese and Soviet forces were engaged in a lengthy border dispute along the Ussuri River, with hundreds killed. And in 1979, let me just get this here. 1979, China invaded Vietnam, and after tens of thousands of casualties, China withdrew its forces. China has not behaved as an exemplary neighbour, and Taiwan must remain vigilant. But if that's the worst you can come up with, Sino-Indian War lasted 2 months. The Ussuri River conflict lasted 7 months. The Vietnam 1979 conflict lasted 1 month. In all that time, our ally, the United States, as we know, have been running battles all the time. And the other part of all this is, Taiwan better watch out because this is what China has done. But Taiwan agrees that Tibet is part of China, and Taiwan's also claiming the Spratly Islands, which is part of this whole narrative of Chinese aggression. So it doesn't make sense to say.
Not just them, because the Vietnamese, the Philippines, I think there's another country, they all claim the Spratlys.
Yes. Yeah.
It's one of those things. I just think that, anyway, I've said it before, but I think if Taiwan would actually renounce their claims to the South China Sea, if they'd actually renounce their claims to anything that's on mainland China, that would be a first step. And then after that, that would eliminate anything that China could actually say to them.
I just find it laughable when the argument is, watch out, Taiwan, because remember, China invaded Tibet. Meanwhile, the Taiwanese are going, yeah, because it's all part of our empire. They're supposed to do that. And look out, Taiwan.
Well, and it's the same with the Sino-Soviet War.
Yes.
The Russians stole all of Manchuria.
Right, yes.
So they're just claiming a bit of land back.
Yeah, a fight over an island in the middle of a river was what that was. Like,
my understanding is the border has changed in the last year or so, whilst the Russians were distracted with the Ukraine war.
Okay. There goes sneaky Chinese.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. But so we are getting this perpetual propaganda from the Murdoch press, and people are swallowing it, as you can see in the letters to the editor. And we've reached the point now where Australians fear attack from China more than Taiwanese do. So the Australia Institute did a poll of 1,000 Australians and a poll of 1,000 Taiwanese. This is back in 2022. And what you find is that Australians are more scared and more fearful of China than the Taiwanese are. So some of the statistics, this was the one that really got me was, do you think China will launch an armed attack on your country? And the answers were soon, sometimes, never, and don't know. But for the one of soon, as in the worst case scenario, do you think China will soon launch an armed attack on your own country? 5% of Taiwanese thought that was the case. 9% of Australians thought that was the case.
Jesus Christ.
More Australians thought we were going to be attacked by China soon than Taiwanese did. And when it came to sometime, do you think it will be attacked sometime? Well, 53% of Taiwanese did and 38% of Australians did. It's just an extraordinary statistic that when it comes to will we be attacked soon, Australians have been so propagandised that they were more fearful and more expectant of a war soon with China on our own shores than the Taiwanese themselves.
I actually think we're more likely to be attacked by India than we are by China.
Yeah, well, and all of that chance. Why would India do that?
Well, it's 1 billion people. It's a populist government. I would say it's more belligerent, considerably more likely to be belligerent than China is.
Mm.
Well, I think that if India actually did that, then China would probably take them out. You know.
The other statistic was then just asking Australians, do you think China will launch an armed attack on Taiwan? So we already know that the Taiwanese, when it comes to will there be one soon, is 5%. But asking Australians, do they think there will be an attack by China soon on Taiwan, it's 23%. So nearly 5 times as many Australians think Taiwan's going to be attacked soon as actual Taiwanese think that. It's just because we've been fed this complete bullshit story by people who want to encourage the whole arms race and our need to be, entrenched with America, and this is where we've got to.
Look, I think it's highly likely that China will at some point decide that Taiwan's got to be taken out, but I couldn't tell you when, and I couldn't tell you, it's just one of those things. I think that the latest statistics I've read suggest that China will get old before it gets rich. And if they're going to take out Taiwan, they're going to have to move on it before they end up being old, before they get rich.
They won't have to, Scott. They're just going to do it economically.
Yeah, I know, which is one of the things you've said before.
Can I just give you one more statistic from this group of statistics? So then they asked Taiwanese people, are they prepared to go to war to gain independence from China? So they asked Taiwanese people whether Taiwanese people would be prepared to go to war to help to get their independence from China. 17% of Taiwanese said yes, and 26% of Australians said that Australians would go to war for the independence of Taiwan. So
but Taiwan
more
isn't
than the
independent from
Taiwanese.
China. Taiwan is China.
Yes, when I'm saying China, I'm saying our current understanding of mainland China and Xi Jinping.
The CCP.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. So basically, really interesting statistics where we've had such a beat of war drums that we're more scared and more willing to go to war for Taiwan than the actual Taiwanese themselves. Quite shocking, I thought.
That it is.
What else have I got here? Let me see. Trying to find you some. Just generally, a quick sort of facts on a few things. Chinese shipbuilding. The US accounts for 0.1% of global shipbuilding. Meanwhile, China produces more than the rest of the world combined. China, US doesn't make stuff anymore.
What about their naval shipyards? Would that be mostly naval ships that they produce?
Just ships.
Okay.
In 2024 alone, a single Chinese firm, the China State Shipbuilding Corporation, built more commercial ships by tonnage than the entire US shipbuilding industry has built since the end of World War II. In a single year.
So all the freight that comes from China, all of the goods that's manufactured in China has to be shipped.
Yeah. China used more cement in the last 3 years than the US used in the entire 20th century.
Yep.
That was back in 2013.
None of that surprises me because China has made that leap from the second world to the first world, and they did it relatively quickly.
And they've been spending it on infrastructure.
Yeah, I know. They started it, shall we say, in the 80s. So they've been going for 40 years, and they've been running a hell of a lot faster than the Yanks have for those 40 years. And the other thing is, too, that they are killing us all on renewables. They are, yes, they are still producing coal-fired power stations, but they're producing less coal-fired power stations, and they've got a limited lifespan on them. So they reckon that they're probably going to stop burning coal to produce electricity in the next 10 to 15 years.
I saw an article about Albo saying something about utes, and all the bleating in the comments about, electric vehicles are going to be the end of the world and we're not going to be able to charge them. And I've got a gas guzzler and I'm proud of it. And I need it for the 1 weekend a year I take my boat out.
Yeah, but that whole nonsense over electric vehicles, that was all just nonsense because Toyota said at the same time as they were, I think Toyota actually said it at the time when Morrison was making a fool of himself over it. He said that Toyota said that all their current vehicles they've got in production or not in production, but in production planning to move to an electric vehicle. So they're going to have them as electric as also petrol. Anyway,
Toyota were a hybrid. In fact,
anyway,
the CEO
Toyota
resigned because of that.
Really? Okay, gotcha.
I've been talking about a book, The China Model by Danielle Bell, no relation, which I found quite interesting. And it's the aim of the book is to desacralize the idea of one vote, one person. So, as I mentioned before, the argument has turned around to the sort of these are authoritarian regimes and Xi Jinping is a dictator and there's no legitimacy to the Chinese Communist Party's rule over China. And there's any number of polls which...
Well, they won the Civil War.
Yeah, but there's any number of polls that demonstrate extreme satisfaction in China with their government and happiness with the system and an unwillingness to change, particularly compared to other countries. I'll probably do those polls next week, I think, because I think we've done that sort of thing before. Maybe I can do... and these are polls that are done by Western groups, and people think, the Chinese people were probably feeling under a compulsion where they couldn't talk frankly and they didn't really give their honest opinion because they were worried about repercussions. And the pollsters go, no. In other countries, like Russia, for example, people were able to say to us, we're not happy and, we want the vote or we want whatever. Like in countries where they expected people to be not happy with their authoritarian regime, people were able to say to the pollsters, we're not happy. So in China, they feel they were getting honest responses from people when they were saying, we are very happy with our system of government. Because essentially, it's what you said earlier, Scott, the deal is if you run the government well and standard of living's increase, then we're happy for the rock show to be done the way it's done. So, but rather than get in the weeds of those polls, just back to this book, he's sort of saying, like many have said before, democracies aren't all that they're cracked up to be, that they do have flaws in them, and a sort of what he is describing is a meritocracy, which the Chinese system aims to be, has a lot of things going for it over and above a democracy. So this author lived and worked in China for 10 years, involved in academia and stuff, and he realised over time that his best students were being recruited by the CCP. In the book, he's arguing that there's democracy at the village level. People get to vote and to and feel kind of almost a Western style democracy at village level, but it is a meritocracy at the top level of government. And he sort of throughout the book shows that China's top leaders have been groomed over decades to avoid beginner mistakes, and that democracies around the world no longer set a clear-cut positive example. He says China's not perfect, but the system has performed relatively well. And so as part of sort of defending the idea of a political meritocracy as opposed to a democracy, he outlines a few of the flaws of democracies, and that's in chapter 1. One of the flaws, Scott, is the tyranny of majority, i.e., the example would be boomers. It's a flaw in our democracy that boomers, as that generation has moved through, have been able to vote for laws that would benefit
advantage
their
them
cohort at the expense of the minority. So democracies suffer through the tyranny of the majority, which is a fair criticism. He also talks about the tyranny of the minority, and we only need to look at the Israeli lobby as an example of the tyranny of the minority, where a loud, squeaky wheel minority with powerful vested interests can also overcome the desires and wishes
the mining lobby. Remember the mineral resource tax.
Yeah.
Mineral resources rent tax.
Yeah.
So you've got the tyranny of majority, the tyranny of the minority, the tyranny of voting community. So voters ignore non-voters, such as future generations and global warming, which is true. That's one of the problems with our democracy, is self-centred voting that looks only at the present lifespan of the current voters and doesn't have regard for future generations. So the tyranny of the voting community and the tyranny of competitive individuals, so negative campaigns promoting hatred between parties. So these are some of the problems of democracies that we don't necessarily think about. And he describes a system of like a meritocracy in China and also in Singapore. So now what did he say about Singapore?
The Pay and Pay Party have been in power for 60 years or something.
So he's saying that what makes Singapore's style meritocracy attractive is its stunning economic success. Even social critics contend that most citizens are relatively satisfied and support the system with good reason. So why doesn't Singapore become a true electoral democracy with free and fair elections? The key reason is the contradiction between meritocracy and democracy. Singapore-style meritocracy is based on the assumption that political leaders have a better sense of the community's long-term interest than ordinary citizens do. An example here is the government broke up ethnic enclaves by moving people into ethnically mixed public housing blocks and marginalised ethnic Chinese clan associations. It also, the meritocracy government of Singapore, promoted the use of English, which involved overriding the wishes of all groups, including the majority Chinese. And Lee is quite explicit that Singapore's nation-building exercise was incompatible with majority rule. And quotes a bit here from him. Supposing we had chosen Chinese or tried to sponsor Chinese, how would we make a living? How would we fit ourselves into the region and into the world? We could not have made a living, but the Chinese then would have wanted it. And if we had taken the vote, we would have had to follow that policy. So when people say, oh, ask the people, it's childish rubbish. We are leaders. We know the consequences. They say people can think for themselves. Do you honestly believe that the chap who can't pass primary 6 knows the consequences of his choice when he answers a question viscerally on language, culture and religion? But we knew the consequences. We would starve. We would have race riots. We would disintegrate. So there we go. And today, English is the lingua franca in Singapore. What do you think of that idea, Scott?
Oh, it makes perfect sense. It's like I often apologise to the Europeans that I met, because they're at least bilingual, probably trilingual, and they speak English better than I do. I always apologise to them coming from a monolingual country, and they say, "Well, you don't have to worry about it. English is the lingua franca."
Yeah, like we have over the years played plenty of clips of just stupid American politicians who are just dumbass people. Like they just know nothing, right? And we've got our fair share of them here in Australia as well. Like we've had some shockingly unqualified people running this country, and when you compare to what you get in a meritocracy, and again, just back to Lee Kuan Yew in Singapore, I'm sorry if I constantly preoccupied with the near geniuses and the above average and what they're going to do, but I'm convinced that it is they who ultimately decide the shape of things to come. Lee himself, Lee Kuan Yew, graduated with a rare double first-class honours degree from Cambridge University, and his son, the current Prime Minister, this is going back about 10 years ago, graduated from the same university by scoring 12 more alphas than his nearest competitor, which has never been seen in the history of Tripos at Cambridge. So these are extraordinarily smart people who are in charge of these places compared to the dimwits that we're getting in our democracies.
Here. And I remember you actually using the point that China's got a PhD that's in charge of their science department.
Yep.
Whereas over here we've got people that were allegedly in charge of science and everything that didn't even graduate high school.
Yeah. So just transferring to the Chinese, this is the last extract of this, but this is just to give people a sense of the professionalism of government in some of these non-democratic countries that they're able to have because they're not relying on democratic voting. So when these people have meetings, when the foreign minister in China has a meeting with an ex-Fox News talk show host who's now, holding some position in America, the difference in their knowledge base is extraordinary. So I'll read this bit about China. To get to the top, party officials must typically start from leadership at a primary level office and then be promoted successively to the township level, a county division, a department bureau, and the province/ministry level. A public official aiming to reach the position of vice minister has to be promoted from senior member to deputy section chief. Section chief, division chief, deputy division chief, deputy bureau chief, and vice minister. If one meets the minimum length of service of each rank, one needs at least 20 years to reach the position of vice minister. During the process, officials are typically rotated through the civil service, state-owned enterprises, and government-affiliated social organisations such as universities and community groups, as well as serving in different parts of the country. The top candidates are sent for further training at party and administrative schools in China, and many promising officials are sent to top universities abroad to learn best administrative practices from around the world. Out of 7 million leading cadres, only one out of 140,000 makes it to the province ministry level. A select few move up the ranks and make it to the party's central committee, and then the 25-member Politburo. The members at the very apex of political power, the standing committee of the Politburo, must normally have served as governors or party secretaries of 2 provinces, each the size and population of most countries. In short, top leaders must pass through a battery of merit-based tests and accumulate decades of extensive and diverse administrative experience. In contrast, a person with Barack Obama's pre-presidential professional experience would not even be the manager of a small county in China's system. That's what the world is up against. And that's why they're killing it when they understand how to run a country. Smart people have got there, and against a bunch of dimwits that we have in our system who were used car salesmen last week and now they're foreign minister this week, or, they were just some Labor apparatchik. I think
Did their time in the union movement.
Yeah. I just don't think people understand the skill level of the governance in these places, and it's going to count for stuff at the end of the day. So there we go. Put your money on China to win these battles and become the preeminent sort of power in the world.
I think China is just returning to its, rightful place, because prior to the Industrial Revolution, China was the world's richest country. I think, or maybe India was, but India or China was the world's richest country. And now China is taking over.
India's the comparison, isn't it? Like, turn the clock back 70 years and they're kind of in the same position. Mm-hmm. And one is a democracy, and look where they've ended up, nowhere. And one is a meritocracy, and they're kicking a lot of goals. So there you go, dear listener. I've been wanting to get that off my chest for a while. You guys got any other topics you want to get off your chest?
Yeah, the one I sent to you a couple of weeks ago now, the posters, the Nazi posters.
Yeah, that was a guy who was... Tell a story, John.
He posted various members of the LMP. So it was Dutton,
Gina Reinhardt,
Gina, and actually Trumpeter Patriots, Clive Palmer, and then somebody else as Nazis, and has been charged over pro-Nazi laws in New South Wales.
Oh, really?
Okay.
Yeah, they charged him with knowingly displaying Nazi symbols without an excuse, despite the fact that this was very obviously a protest against people he considered to be Nazis.
Yes, he wasn't promoting Nazism. He was accusing these people of being Nazi-like.
Yes.
And that is a bad thing, is what he was saying, rather than that's a good thing. What a subversion of the intention of the law.
This was in Wagga Wagga.
Right.
And it was in the window of an ad agency during the federal election campaign. And a 69-year-old man has been charged.
we'll see how that one turns out. Keep an eye on that one.
Hopefully the judge realises it's a total waste of his time.
One would hope so. Yeah.
Because they were charged without a lawful excuse. I think that's a lawful excuse.
The only thing I'd like to bring up is the Johnson Amendment in the United States. The IRS has basically backed down in a lawsuit from a right-wing Christian group and all that sort of stuff, that they have backed away from enforcing it. They said, so it's on the books, but we're not going to enforce it.
Is this the one where they're not supposed to be involved in political sort of
Basically,
exactly.
advocacy?
If you are a tax-free charity, you are not allowed to advocate a political position.
And that's essentially been sort of downgraded to a meaningless law now.
Well,
Exactly.
It's been ignored for many years, but it's always been a don't be too loud about it, otherwise we'll come after your tax-free status.
And
now the IRS has actually said,
we're not going
go
to
your
do it.
hardest.
Right.
Which is one of those things that they're concerned that the churches could set up their own super PACs and everything else to fund a political campaign.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is just going to lead to the fragmentation of the Republican Party, which is, if there is another election in the United States, if there is another free and fair election, then I think the Democrats have got it. But
Trump will win it, Scott.
I think we should also touch on the what's his name files.
Oh,
the Epstein files.
Epstein.
I don't know. It's one of those things, apparently.
The non-existent files.
That is blowing up in his face because he was the one that was out there promoting the Epstein files and everything else. And now it's turned out that there's nothing there. And he's just looking like a dickhead. And
well,
it's absolutely hysterical.
And then what sort of idiot's still talking about this?
Yeah, I know. That they are still carrying on about it.
yes.
No, but him saying
Yes.
Anyone who's carrying on about this is an idiot, and
Yeah,
you
no.
know, I don't need their support. And all of his supporters were going, we voted for you because we thought there was this cabal of evil paedophiles at the top of power. And now you're saying, no, there isn't, which makes us think, since you were best buddies with this guy for a long time, maybe you're involved.
Yeah, I know, which is one of those things. I just think to myself, the conspiracy theorists are going to fly off the handle now and everything else. They're probably going to start pointing the finger at Donald and saying, well, you're probably one of them.
Well, I think they are.
Well,
Yeah. And I just think that Elon Musk is enjoying this, and he's also starting to stoke those fires and everything like that, suggesting that Donald Trump was on the client list.
I was listening to the Planet Extra podcast.
Yeah.
And they were pretty much like, well, you know, seemingly there were no files, and sort of taking the view that Trump mustn't be any dirt on Trump. And I don't know. I just
there's
think
plenty of dirt on Trump. There have been a lot of allegations against Trump.
that's what I think. I think the reason he's not exposing it is because his name's all over it.
Well,
So I just
listening to Ezra Klein, who is a respected US journalist,
yeah.
he was saying, look, I think Epstein knew a lot of rich and powerful people because the rich and powerful in New York all knew each other, all hung out together. But he did this on his own, and really he was schmoozing these people. Sure, there's no list of other people who were involved. But yes, he knew all these people and was friends with them.
Yeah, it's one of those things. I just think to yourself that they found an address book and everything else that's probably got, I think it's got Bill Gates' name in it and everything else. So what?
Surely
that doesn't mean that he was actually a client.
Well, it was the Lolita Express, wasn't it? It was the people who flew to the island in the US Virgin Islands, I think it is.
I couldn't tell you.
But surely any intelligence agency worth its salt, Mossad, CIA, would know what Epstein's doing with these people.
Well,
And
there
would
were
surely
allegations
think
that
here
Mossad
is-
funded him.
Yes, and would surely be thinking this is an opportunity to get dirt on people for blackmail. Like that's what spy agencies do with honey traps all the time. It's hard to
And-
imagine they would be negligent if they weren't involved in this. You know, if you were,
Allegedly, the DA who gave him that sweetheart deal down in Florida in 2005,
yeah,
when asked why he gave the sweetheart deal, was told that he was an intelligence asset and to back off.
yeah. So I just think it seems bleedingly obvious to me that he'd be implicated in a lot of nasty stuff there, and that's why he doesn't want it revealed. And I just sort of people are taking a sort of a charitable view of it. And I just don't understand. The man's character and everything points towards that. So, will we ever know? That's the.
I don't think we're ever going to know.
Yeah.
You know,
we might find out in
probably the only thing that might actually be worth looking at is the way in which he died, because they reckon it was suicide, but then there's minutes of the footage and everything else that were missing. So,
well, that was because the recording system needed to reboot for a minute at midnight every night.
And Epstein just seems to have acquired a lot of money through means that were not entirely obvious.
Clear.
And how do you pronounce his girlfriend, Ghislaine?
Ghislaine Maxwell.
Daughter of Robert Maxwell, who had
was
his own sort of history with
Mossad.
Like
and the KGB and the CIA. Yeah, he was in deep with all the intelligence
So
agencies.
how would it be possible that his daughter is knocking around with Epstein and Mossad's not involved? Come on.
It's one of those things, Trevor. I think you've got to take your anti-Israel glasses off right now to have a look at this. It's just, I realize that the world has now heard the name Mossad and everything like that, and so they're actually realizing it's an intelligence organization. So they're actually saying, well, Mossad probably had something to do with it. Well, you know,
But wouldn't that be their job, Scott?
I couldn't tell you whether or not Mossad is actually keeping that close an eye on the United States.
Oh, almost certainly.
Okay,
How else do you think they get the votes that they get? How do you think they get the military funding they get?
Because of the Israel lobby in the United States, but as to how well backed that is by Mossad, I couldn't tell you.
Well, okay, maybe I'm too skeptical and cynical.
No, I just think to myself that it's one of those things. I don't think we're ever going to know.
You just think there's a fair chance that Mossad just couldn't be interested in this sort of stuff, Scott.
No, I just think to myself that Mossad isn't actually pulling the strings that like you make them out to be, because they've got they've got enough of their own enemies in their backyard that they've got to keep an eye on rather than the United States.
Well, okay. Yeah. Alrighty, in the chat room,
It's a very interesting conversation.
Murray says, if only Epstein knew it was a hoax, he wouldn't have needed to unalive himself.
Well, yeah, if it was a hoax, how come Ghislaine's in prison for 20 years is what other people have been saying.
Yes.
What's she in prison for?
Transporting
of
people
underage.
across state lines,
Gotcha.
technically.
No worries.
So, yeah. A sordid part of human history. We'll never know the true answer, I suspect.
Well, I think we will, but maybe not in our lifetimes.
Yeah. Anything else, Scott? Joe? We'll wrap it up.
That's about it from me.
All right. Thanks in the chat room. You've been good. We will be back next week. Bye for now.
And it's a good night from him.
And it's a good